The NCAA struggles with legal sports betting landscape continues as plenty of uncertainty remain. So the NCAA, with the proliferation of legal sports gambling across the country, is having a hard time dealing with and figuring out how to regulate this. So as we all know, Alabama baseball coach Brad Bohannon was fired back in April after it pretty much came out that he bet on his own team. It was suspicious betting activity. We all believe he bet on his own team. There was an unusually high bet placed on a certain game, and he unusually didn't start his ace that game. This was just very, very, very intriguing, set off enough alerts that they pulled betting. Now, this is going to be a big issue. So the question is that the NCAA is trying to figure out, is that evidence of a growing problem, or is this proof that the NCAA's regulations have worked? So right now, there's a long-standing rule at the NCAA that employees, coaches, administrators, and athletes cannot wager on any sport, amateur, pro, or college, in which the association sponsors a championship. So basically, NCAA people cannot bet on NCAA events. Period. End of story. That's just how it goes. Now, Matt Holt, president of U.S. Integrity, says that needs to be reconsidered. He says, at the end of the day, you're not likely really having any influence. Why can't a baseball player at LSU bet on a basketball game involving the University of Michigan? So here's my question for the message board. Should NCAA people be allowed, say an NCAA football player, should they be allowed to bet on an NCAA basketball game? Should the standard be, if you are an NCAA athlete, you can't bet on any NCAA event, period, of the story? You can't bet on any NCAA event involving your school. You can't bet on any NCAA event involving your sport. You only can't bet on NCAA events involving your school or your sport, or you can just bet on whatever you want. Now, my standard is, I'm just going to be honest, if you're an NCAA athlete, you can't bet on any event, the NCAA. I am pro sports gambling. I am pro legalized sports gambling, but I am very, very strict on betting. And here's why. NCAA athletes, if you guys know how, for those of you who've gone to college, know that athletes hang out in cliques a lot. A lot of football players and basketball players are friends. Basketball players, women's basketball players, basketball players, softball players, baseball players, basketball players. They're all friends with each other. They're all very connected, much more connected than you and I. So I don't think it's, and also many of them play multiple sports sometimes. Because of that, I don't think it's appropriate for them to be able to bet on any other sports, because they have too much insider information and that can skew the betting lines, which is as bad as betting against yourself in a game and losing on purpose. It's as bad if you look at the natural end result of this. And so I think the best thing for the NCAA to do is actually to keep what they have. And I can't believe I'm giving the NCAA credit for this, but I think this is a good rule. You can't bet, if you are affiliated with the NCAA, you can't bet on anything affiliated with the NCAA. It's just that simple. I think it's way too dangerous. It sets way too dangerous of a precedent, and it opens the floodgates of some really, really, really big issues. In gambling, look, it's insider trading. I'm just going to say what it is. It's insider trading, and this is where Congress should get involved. I don't think Congress should get involved with NIL. I think they should get involved with gambling. Okay, they should be stepping in for these leagues and saying, this will not be tolerated. If you bet on the league you are playing in, you will go to prison. If you bet in the stock market on a business that you run, that's insider trading and you go to prison. It should be the exact same for betting on a sport you play or an organization you are a part of in athletics. You should not be allowed to bet on NCAA events if you are an NCAA athlete, if you're an NCAA employee, if you're an NCAA coach, an NCAA administrator, whatever it is, you should not be allowed to bet on that. That is a massive, massive conflict of interest, and it will derail the NCAA. So what I'm saying is they should stick with where they are right now. I don't think the Alabama situation should raise any red flags on them needing to change anything. I argue that that's proof that it worked the way it should have. He was placing bets he shouldn't have placed. The NCAA figured it out. He got fired and he got in trouble. That's just how it went. So I think personally, I just think that you should not be allowed to gamble on sports you play. So a couple of interesting points. Rocket Top Tom, you bring up a great point. You say, so Congress, the people who make money on illegal insider trading, are supposed to regulate sports betting. That's a great point. We all agree it's ridiculous that Congress can insider trade. But that doesn't mean that the laws against insider trading shouldn't exist, which they do have laws against insider trading. So and Gary Harper jumps in. Welcome, Gary Harper. Says, you want Congress to speak out against insider trading? Okay, I get y'all's point. Yes, members of Congress do insider trading, and it's ridiculous, and they shouldn't be allowed to do it. That doesn't mean we should get rid of insider trading laws, though. It was Congress that passed insider trading laws. So, again, they're upholding the laws, it's not for themselves, okay, which is a ethics issue on its own, but that does not mean we should be getting rid of insider trading laws altogether. That would be crazy with the stock market and how things go, okay? So I would say that whatever your feelings on members of Congress are on insider trading and things like that, and of course it's a problem, and I have no problem with trying to call it out every chance you get. That doesn't mean insider trading laws shouldn't exist, and that doesn't mean there shouldn't be laws against gambling on sports you play, because that is a form of insider trading. It just is. And you guys can't convince me otherwise. There's just no way the sports can't survive if insider trading becomes a part of it. You have to always believe your sport is on the up and up. Okay, 1919 almost derailed baseball. Go back and look it up. The 1919 White Sox threw the World Series, and quite honestly, they had a reasonable point to do it, given how they were getting cheated in their pay by the White Sox owner at the time. That's a different story, but either way, they still almost derailed the sport. So people who cared about the sport, Commissioner Kennesaw Mountain Landis, who was not the best person in the world, really enforced the gentleman's agreement to keep baseball segregated. So I'm no fan of Kennesaw Mountain Landis, but made the right move to throw them all out and make the stance, this will not be tolerated, because they nearly derailed baseball. And if Babe Ruth doesn't start putting on a show start putting on a show in the 20s, baseball gets derailed. Quite honestly, the sport dies. That's why Pete Rose, the ban, had to be upheld the way it was. I think the NCAA is right with their current ruling right now. I'm totally okay with it. The question is going to become, we all kind of agree that the NCAA as a governing authority is pretty much dying. It's going to be non-existent in a few years. Will the same rule exist with conferences in the future? I think it should. We'll see how it goes. Before we get out of here, I want to go to the message boards one more time. Rocky Top Tom with a great question. Do you think 2,000 years ago the Romans were etching on stone message boards about whether gladiator betting should be regulated? You know, Rocky Top Tom, the Romans were so advanced in so many ways for their time. I bet there was betting on these, and I bet there was some sort of stone art, whatever you want to call it, that they had the bets on. So betting's very old, okay? Betting's a very, very old job, a very, very old industry. D says gambling in and of itself is wrong. If you're going to make it legal, make it all legal. Laws against gambling were established 5,000 years ago. This is a dead topic. I disagree. You can make things legal and then regulated. I mean, look, alcohol is legal. That doesn't mean people under 18 should drink it, or that people should drink and drive. So it's just one of those things. So I disagree on that.